Today's text comes from the prophet Isaiah, chapter 49, verses 1 through 6. In your Pew Bible, it is on page 592. Listen to me, O coastlands. Pay attention, you peoples from far away. The Lord called me before I was born. While I was in my mother's womb, the Lord named me. God made my mouth like a sharp sword. In the shadow of his hand he hid me. The Lord made me a polished arrow. In the quiver he hid me away. And God said to me, You are my servant Israel, in whom I will be glorified. But I said, I have labored in vain. I have spent my strength for nothing in vanity. Yet surely my cause is with the Lord, and my reward with my God. And now the Lord says, Who formed me in the womb to be his servant and to bring Jacob back, and that Israel might be regathered, for I am honored in the sight of the Lord, and my God has become my strength. The Lord says, It is too light a thing that you should be my servant, to raise up the tribes of Jacob and to restore the survivors of Israel. I will give you as a light to the nations, that my salvation may reach the ends of the earth. The word of the Lord. The prophet Isaiah is written at a time, or this portion of Isaiah is written at a time when the people of Israel are in exile. The people of Israel have been taken away from their land. The people of Israel are suffering. The moment of difficulty has come, and they are now living in the midst of this turmoil and tribulation. It is a time when they are crying out to the Lord. It is during these texts over the last 5 to 10 chapters of this text that we just read, that God is providing them with hope and reminding them of what's to come. It is in this text that we see the text in the verses of the suffering servant to which Jesus is attributed to. It is in these texts that we see that God says he will rise up the water in the dry lands, in the deserts, that the mountains will be brought down and the hill and the valleys will be brought up, and God will make a plain so that all can walk and gather. It is in these texts when the hope has been lost, when all darkness seems to have surrounded, that God is reminding them that no matter what happens, God is in control. And it is a reminder to us as we walk this journey of life, that through our moments of difficulty, through our moments of darkness, through our moments when it feels like there's nothing left, God is still in the midst of. This weekend, we are celebrating the life of a modern prophet in Martin Luther King Jr., whose movement and whose encouragement is still heard throughout this time and throughout the last 60 to 70 years and will continue as we move forward. A modern prophet who was willing to speak up against injustice. A modern prophet who was willing to start a movement of nonviolence. And I think that that's where we need to start. Because too often, we try to meet violence with violence. Too often, we meet or want to meet hate with hate. Too often, we try to fight negativity with negativity. But the truth is that it hasn't, and it won't ever work to change the situation. We've seen violent clashes happen again and again, and more often than not, they lead to more violence. In our society today, we live in a society where people want to get more armed. So if you have a bigger gun than I have, then I need to get an even bigger gun. And it keeps escalating, and the violence keeps moving, and nothing seems to get done. It continues to serve us no good, but continues to kill so many. Violence meeting violence doesn't work. We need to change the conversation. We need to change the situation, and we need to change ourselves. Because I know it's hard. It's hard when someone is speaking something or saying something that you don't agree with. It's easy to say, you're the worst, or meet that violence or that difficulty with difficulty of your own. How can we go against it? We want to build up, to restrain, and to fight against. But your hate is causing me to grow more hate, and that is not helping either of us. It is a known fact that when someone lives a negative life, living in negativity and hate and malice and struggling with stress and all the things that come, it affects you physically. It affects you physically to the extent that it can kill you. Martin Luther King died at 39 years of age, and when they did his autopsy, his heart was of a 60-year-old because of all the stress that he had suffered fighting against all that he was fighting against. So here's someone whose stress was to be nonviolent, and it still affected him physically. How does that stuff affect you? How does it affect us as individuals? How does it affect us as a community? Because it affects all of us. But yet there's something that we do have control of. I may not be able to change your mind. And if I meet hate with hate, or I meet anger with anger, it's just going to cause and elevate the anger in both of us. But if I see this hate and anger within myself, I can control it and I can get rid of it within me. The only thing that we have control over is ourselves. If I can change this within me, then I will see that others will be affected by it. That was the brilliance of the nonviolent movement. They were expecting violence to be met with violence. But when violence was met with peaceful protest, it caused something to happen. When peaceful protests were attacked, it caused others to see. And it is like that within us. When we change the conversation, when we change who we are and what we are doing, how we are reacting to something, others take notice. When we are different, not only because I'm choosing to be different, but because I'm willing to make the change that needs to be made within me, so that not only do I look different, but in fact, I am different. It is when we're willing and able to do that, that we are able to make changes in others. Not because we are doing it to them, but because they are seeing something within us that's forcing them to change. When they see that you are not only acting different, but that in fact you are different. When you're not meeting their hate with hate, their anger with anger, when you're not shouting at them because they're shouting at you, something changes. Something has changed within you, and something will change in the others who are around you. That is our call. Our call is not to stand up and fight and go out after the other, but in fact, Jesus himself said, when they smack you on your right cheek, turn so that they can smack the other one as well. How difficult is that? It is extremely difficult. And don't mess with me, I'm from the Bronx. Like, if you're going to come at me, my first instinct is going to be to come at you. But I have to choose to be different. I have to work on me to be different. I have to come before the Lord each and every day. Because I don't want the change to be superficial. I don't want to fake it. I don't want to just pretend. So I come up here and act one way here and say certain things here and then walk out and do everything that I said I wasn't doing. Because that hypocrisy is seen in you. Just because you act one way here and another way there doesn't mean it doesn't cross over. People know when you're faking it. People can see through hypocrisy. Others will know that you may be acting this way here, but I know who you are for real. And we've seen that. We know that. We've experienced it, whether we've done it or we've seen it. We all have some sort of experience with that. So the change and the call on each of our lives is to be different. To be the people of God that God is calling us to be. Because as our text says today, God is calling us to be light to the nations. Because it is through us that God is acting in the world. It is through you as an individual, through us as the community of God, that God is working in this world. If we're faking it, if we're pretending to be, we will not affect or work or be able to do the work that God has called us to. But if we're willing to make the change, we're willing to respond to the call. And it's difficult because we are now 52 years after the assassination of Martin Luther King. And he knew that what he was doing and the vision that God had given him, it wasn't going to be complete within his lifetime. He knew that. But are you willing to be a part of something bigger than you? Something that you are a part of, that you help to move forward, that you help to grow because of who you've become, because of how you've changed, because of what you've done, but you won't see the fruit of it. But generations later will be able to benefit from what you have done, how you stood up, the words that you spoke. Are you willing to be a part of that? And that's difficult. Because in our lives today, we have our goals set. Well, these are the things we want to accomplish. These are the things we want to do. And we want it to happen in this time. In these 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. These are the things I want to accomplish, how I want to accomplish them, when and where. And all of the how to and wherefores are there. But are you willing to work at something that you might not see the end of? That's a difficult question. That's a difficult proposition. That means that we have to be willing to make the change within and to live out this change and live out this person that God has called us to be, but yet we may not see the fruit of that. But others will. Others down the line, a future generation may hear the words that you wrote down one day. Or a future generation may be affected by a person that you planted seeds in today. Because it's not about speaking to thousands. It's not about affecting 1 million people because you're on TV or you're in front of a camera or you're in front of a huge congregation. It is about planting the seeds of hope in individuals, in one person, because you don't know how that person will affect the rest of the world. But if you bring hope, if you plant seeds of hope in all those people who cross your path, that is your call. That is who God is calling us to be. Some of us may be called to speak to thousands. Some of us may be called to write and to affect thousands of people. But all of us are called to affect even just one person. And we don't know who that person may be, so we plant seeds of hope in all those who cross our path. Our co-workers, our fellow sojourners as we're driving to work or we're on the train or on the bus. The person at the store in front of you who's struggling. The people around you as you're at the bank. The people here sitting with you. The people who are around you in different places and spaces. It is up to you to spread seeds of hope because you don't know how much they need that. And by planting seeds of hope, by bringing encouragement into their life, you may be able to change not only them, but change a whole generation of people, because you were willing to follow your call and share the hope that God has given to you. We're all part of something bigger than us. We're all part of something bigger than what we can perceive. We are all part, each and every one of us as individuals. We as the collective Lower Merion Baptist Church, we are part of the bigger church. We are just a small people in the midst of a huge congregation. And it is up to each and every one of us to share those seeds of hope. Because we don't know how much that person may need it, and we don't know how much that person will affect those around them. But if you are willing to carry your part, if you are willing to respond to your call, if you are willing to do just a simple act of changing yourself so that others can see it, others can experience it, others can be a part of, and others can find hope where they can't see hope otherwise, God will bless you, your family, those around you. God will use you if you are willing to respond to your call.